I'm Tim Knoll from Blind Ambition Hunting Supplies, and we're going to spend some time today here showing you how to properly start the skinning process on your deer. We've got a nice trophy quality buck from southwestern Wisconsin today, so we're also going to show a method for removing the cape so it's in good shape for the taxidermist. Our emphasis is not going to be on speed, and it's not going to be on showing off how skilled we are doing this. It's going to be taking our time and showing you how to do this the right way, the clean way, and we're going to do all of our work with a knife, none of it with a saw, and we think that's important because a saw just becomes a means of spreading contamination from one deer to the next. And if you watch what we're doing and study it carefully, you'll be successful at doing it. You won't struggle at it, and you won't ruin the edge on your knife if you follow our method. Before I start, I want to talk a little bit about the tools that we use. One of them is a butcher steel, and I don't know if you can get a close enough view of this steel, but this is a textured steel, not a smooth steel. It has small ribs in it. This is not the kind of steel that an expert knife man who cuts meat every day would use. They would use a smooth one to try and maintain a super keen, shaving sharp edge. But we're trying to keep our knife in working condition so that if we rub it too hard on the cutting board, or if we nick a bone, roll the edge, we have this texture to help us bring it back. And I'll demonstrate that while we're working. Notice when I'm going to the steel with my knife, I'm making 4 or 5 backward strokes. And this is not something that you commonly see demonstrated by people, but I learned this from an expert knife man, and it's really good for people like us that don't do this for a living and aren't as careful with our edge. And so if I bumped a bone or I rubbed on the hide a little too long, it'll roll the edge over a little by going backwards, and you can feel it drag on the knife, and when it begins to go smooth, then you can go forward with your proper angle. If you do that periodically while you're doing this, you'll hold a good edge through the whole process. Let's talk about the proper angle. It's hard for beginners to understand and get a grasp of what we're looking for here, but here's a simple way for you to establish the right angle. So if you start with 90 degrees, come straight down on your steel, and of course we won't touch it with our edge of our knife, and cut that angle in half, we've got 45. We cut that in half again, we have 22 and a half. And 22 and a half is a great place to start. If you hold that angle while you're steeling and while you're sharpening and honing, you'll be able to maintain a good working edge on your knife. And you know, some of the expert people will tell you that that should be 20 and a half degrees, or it should be 25 degrees, depending on the tool, and I agree with that. But for a beginner, at 22 and a half, it'll get you started in the right direction, and you can refine it from there, but that's a good place to start. Second tool that I've got is the red apron. I think having an apron is real important, and I like the red one because when you do have a stray hair that you pick off from the animal, sometimes it's hard to see. It's hard to see if you actually got it off the animal, and if you lay it on your red apron, you'll see that the hair is there, and on a white apron you couldn't see that. So that's important. The apron itself, the part that's up where it could contact the meat, is basically above your waist, and when we get to cutting, you'll see the cutting board height is right about waist height. So when we are doing things like removing hair or drying off our gloves, we want to do it on the bottom of the apron, the part that hangs down below the working area. Another thing we've got here today is a bucket of sanitizer solution. And in an inspected slaughtering plant, it's required that you go to a sanitizing step between every carcass. And we'll find various times, like for example, if we have to grab the hide and we get a little blood on our gloves, that's when we want to come back, go to the sanitizer, treat it real well, and then go to the bottom of our apron to dry it off so that we're not carrying that sanitizer back to the meat. We can also do that with our utensils. Real simple, and it's a good practice to do that. Keep them clean through the whole process. We also have a boning hook and there's probably 2 or 3 times that you'll see me use this. It may not be something that a person who's not cutting meat every day has, but it certainly is an aid to when you're removing the head and a couple other places in the process. So that's why I'm carrying that. The gloves themselves, I advocate the use of gloves. For one thing, if you have to frequently go to sanitizer, it'd be hard on your skin. But it's much easier to clean this surface than it is around your fingernails and around the, you know, if you happen to have a scab on your hands or whatever, this is a better practice to have the gloves. The ones I'm using are not drugstore medical exam gloves. These are food handling gloves. They are a lot tougher. They're 7 mils thick, and they have a textured surface which helps you grab the handle of your knife, or if you have to grab the hide. These are strong enough that if you wash them up, you can use them 3-4 deer and you won't poke a hole in them, where the other blue ones that you see, I get halfway through a deer and I cut a hole, and then the whole reason for having them is gone. And the last thing, there's 2 unique knives I want to show you. This is an inside curve. I call it a banana curve knife that we use for going under the hide to start the skinning process. It's really good because it cuts very little hair and it doesn't carry contamination from the outside of the hide to the surface of the meat. And you'll see how this works. It's really important. Outdoor Edge makes this. There's a couple other ones out there. I've tried them and I've found that the Outdoor Edge one is the one that really works the best. I won't do another deer without this knife. I think it's just about essential. Another one that I'm going to use to take off the legs is a regular folding knife, and I'm advocating the use of the serrated portion of the knife to cut the tendons and not getting your working edge of your knife up against the bone where you can roll the edge and cause you a lot of frustration. So we're going to use the serrated portion of the knife to remove the legs, and you'll see how that works. It's pretty remarkable.